The internet has a strange habit of turning complex mental health experiences into viral entertainment.
My whole channel is dedicated to educating people about dissociative identity.
And when it came to this specific corner of the web, nobody did it better than Chloe Wilkinson, a YouTuber who had initially started their channel for educating people about dissociative identity disorder. Their influence grew so strong that they even gained the trust of medical professionals, with some claiming their videos actually helped them make diagnoses.
Just the other day, I was able to realize that a patient has DID even though she did not endorse any symptoms of it other than conversing with other parts. I knew to ask about that because of
And others recommending their videos to patients.
I'm a doctoral level clinical psychologist in the US who treats DID patients. Your videos are phenomenal. I frequently recommend.
What started as a safe space for trauma survivors slowly turned into the glamorization of a serious disorder. But to fully understand the story of where things went wrong, we actually have to go back to a few years ago before the massive call-out videos and the endless community drama to look at how this channel was built in the first place. Born and raised in the quiet town of Manningtree, Essex, Chloe's life seemed to be moving right on track. She had left home to study psychology at the University of East Anglia, but her own mind became her biggest obstacle. In 2017, at the age of 21, Chloe received a life-altering diagnosis: dissociative identity disorder.
I have dissociative identity disorder.
A condition caused by severe childhood trauma that forces the mind to cope with the trauma by splitting into separate personality states, also called alters. Due to their worsening mental health, they had to pack up their life and move back into their parents' house, where they began searching about DID on their own. During that research, Chloe realized they should use their experience and their background in psychology to help other people. On March 24th, 2018, they started a YouTube channel called DissociaDID, and in the DID community, they became known as DD. Their very first video, Dissociative Identity Disorder, The Basics of DID, ended up pulling in over 250,000 views, almost overnight. A channel that started with nothing was suddenly commanding the attention of a massive global audience. After seeing how well the first video did, DD ran with it. They began dropping new videos introducing their various alters and breaking down their specific roles within the system.
Is Chloe. I'm the host of the Dissociative System.
Hello everybody.
My name's Nadia. It's nice to meet you. Hi. So, my name is Nina.
And the viewers were absolutely hooked. People found this discussion about DID informative, fascinating, and at times deeply heartbreaking. Over time, the channel evolved from a basic educational page into a massive family portrait, as DD eventually introduced over 20 different alters to the world. It was a golden era for the channel, but in the background, a brand new alter ego was quietly waking up. DissociaDID's growth gave DDs more than just fame. It gave them a real community to connect with. And it was at the center of that very community that they found another prominent DID creator called Team Pinata. DD and Team Pinata went from friends to lovers fairly quickly. At first, DD and Nin looked like the ultimate cute internet couple. They did all the coupley things that people did with DID dreamed of doing, like filming casual sofa chats videos together and doing each other's makeup. The audience was fascinated to see two people with DID living their best lives. At the time, multiple alters from both systems were actively dating each other, like DissociaDID's Kyle with Team Pinata's Riven, Nin dating Nan, and the list went on. For a while it was cute, but slowly the audience began to sense that something was off. It was a subtle shift, but it became impossible to ignore when they released their Disneyland vlog. It was already bizarre that two creators with severe trauma and PTSD would film a video in such a loud, overwhelming environment, but the real breaking point for the audience was the fact that they made their child alters responsible for the day. For people who actually live with DID, the clean, perfectly timed switching and effortless vlogging just didn't look real. Not long after, the wider YouTube community caught wind of it. Other creators began dropping videos dissecting the trip, putting DD and Nin in the hot seat, and asking the obvious question. Even if this was real in the first place, was it ever a safe thing to do? But whether it was staged for the cameras or 100% real, one thing was undeniable: it was an incredibly reckless move. Just as the backlash on the Disneyland video was reaching its peak, a medical miracle occurred, one that was just a little too perfect to be true. Viewers were already growing deeply skeptical, and the sudden double integration that happened just a couple of weeks after the Disney trip only added fuel to the fire. Two alters who were dating across both systems suddenly fused with other personalities at the exact same time. Now, integration in DID, if you don't know, is a deeply complex psychological shift where two alters become one. It's a part of the healing process and can take months, sometimes years of therapy. For it to happen simultaneously to a dating couple felt entirely fabricated. But even with all the skepticism from viewers, the couple didn't split up. They actually stayed together for nearly a year. If anything, the whole drama only brought them closer, and in December 2019, they announced their engagement online. The engagement was more than just a romantic partnership. It was the union of two creators who would do whatever it took to conquer YouTube. By this time, DD was already a well-known creator among the DID community, but then came a moment where their fame went really sky high. On March 4th, 2020, Anthony Padilla released a video titled "I Spent a Day with Multiple Personalities, DissociaDID Identity Disorder." This video launched DD past the niche corners of the mental health community and straight into mainstream internet stardom. But the story of how they secured that career-defining interview spot is a masterclass drama in itself. Originally, the spot was supposed to go to Multiplicity and Me, another highly respected creator in the space. But things went south when Anthony Padilla's production agency realized Multiplicity was based in the UK and they didn't have the budget to fly them out to the US. Multiplicity was incredibly graceful about it. For them, the goal was always mental health awareness, not clout, so they were perfectly happy to step aside for a US-based system. But then they found out the agency's backup choice was an endogenic system, which, if you're unfamiliar with, refers to people who claim to have multiple personalities without any underlying trauma. Since it isn't recognized as a clinical disorder, Multiplicity worried it would completely misrepresent real DID to a mainstream audience. Desperate to save the interview's educational value, Multiplicity reached out to the agency again. They offered to pay for their own flights or at least recommend a legitimate US-based trauma system. The agency wrote back that they would call them to discuss further, but never did. Frustrated, Multiplicity vented about the situation in a private Facebook group. Now, here's the interesting part. DD happened to be in that same group with Multiplicity. They saw the post and didn't hesitate bypassing Multiplicity even for a second. They immediately contacted the agency and pitched themselves for the spot. The wildest part about this whole drama is that DD was also a UK-based system, but they, along with Team Pinata, somehow pulled the strings, figured out the travel expenses, and made things work at the expense of betraying Multiplicity. When Multiplicity later reached out to DD to ask how they could betray a friend like that, they simply said it was just business. When this story eventually leaked to the public in 2020, it cast a dark shadow over DD's biggest milestone. By this point, some fans were already losing interest in the channel. The content had drifted from genuine mental health education into superficial makeup vlogs, new alter introductions, and dramatic switches on camera. The truth about the Anthony Padilla interview only made things worse for DD, giving the internet a reason to completely turn on them. I've also been here since the beginning and have been frankly appalled by their behavior. They're not who I want representing me or a disorder anymore unless they do serious work to rebuild the trust they've broken. If that makes me an internet villain, so be it. Yeah, and they got famous with a video made by super famous YouTuber Anthony Padilla. She knew what she was doing, especially since she snatched the opportunity from Multiplicity and Me. While the comment sections were turning into a war zone divided between loyal defenders enjoying the videos and critics calling out the drop in quality, DD was completely unbothered. Their mind was entirely focused on the future because they had announced their marriage with TP for spring. But right as the wedding bells were starting to ring, the internet found something deeply disturbing about the couple. In April 2020, a bizarre secret was uncovered. Team Pinata had a hidden sneezing fetish. On its own, having a rare fetish isn't something morally wrong, but things become downright weird when viewers began rewatching DD's old content through this new lens, realizing that their casual random sneezes during videos were actually there to enable TP's fetish in plain sight.
Bless me. Bless me. Sorry.
And the real red flag was a video TP himself put out, masking his fetish behind a massive YouTube trend. At the time, DID creators frequently uploaded comparison videos to highlight how things like their handwriting or posture changed depending on which alter was in control. TP used that exact format to showcase how their alters sneezed. And DD actively drove their own audience to go watch it without ever mentioning TP's kink. By doing this, they completely took away the viewer's right of consent. The audience thought they were engaging with harmless mental health content, entirely unaware they were being forced into someone else's kink, and when the truth came out, the viewers were understandably grossed out Oh boy, that is gross behavior. Like, why post that? It's honestly disgusting and disgraceful. And posting that kind of stuff on Insta, yeah, that'd be an Insta ban waiting to happen. Cue drum joke sound. I had to throw in a little joke to lighten the mood a bit. DissociaDID telling people to watch a fetish video without telling people it's a fetish video, taking away informed consent. Digging deeper into their digital footprint, the internet uncovered that TP belonged to a private fetish blog. The whole situation was already bad as it was, but what happened next was straight up indefensible. Digging deeper into their digital footprint, the internet uncovered that TP belonged to a private fetish blog. There, they routinely shared custom artwork dedicated to their kink, and some of these illustrations depicted minors. The internet was furious, and rightly so. People had started calling it out for what it was: child. There was absolutely no defense that would make this okay, but TP still tried their luck and dropped an apology video.
Those pictures I drew were not meant to be sexy. They were a homage to the character because I appreciated the character and I thought it was cute. It was my mistake. Can't forgive me. I understand. I've drawn some fucked up shit. I don't remember drawing.
Needless to say, nobody bought this apology for the obvious lack of accountability in TP's manner. The criticism got so loud that it became impossible to ignore, forcing Didi to step up and address the issue. Just a couple days after, Didi dropped an apology video of her own, desperately trying to distance themselves from the fallout. They claimed that they had absolutely no idea about TP's kinks, making it clear that they didn't endorse or support a single thing they had done.
The images first started coming out, we wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. We didn't know about any of this stuff, so obviously it's a shock. We can't endorse or support it. It's not okay. And obviously we are very shocked.
After this, Didi took a break from YouTube and TP permanently deleted their YouTube channel. During this time, Didi privated every past video they had filmed with TP, costing their channel a significant portion of their lifetime views, but effectively burying the evidence of their relationship.
Hi everybody, we're taking a break from our break to address what's going on with Team Pinata.
This 1 month break was meant to be a reset, allowing Didi to distance themselves from the drama and continue growing her newly massive audience. But that newfound fame turned out to be a double-edged sword. As the critics began dissecting Didi's past uploads, they found something volatile. In 2018, Didi had introduced an indigenous alter called Nadia.
Hello, my name's Nadia. It's nice to meet you.
And while Didi's niche audience at the time had overlooked Nadia for years, the mainstream media put her under the microscope. The issue was that Nadia was a white creator's highly offensive fantasy of a person of color. Nadia explicitly claimed to be both black and indigenous, even though Didi is white and of British heritage.
Don't relate to this body's skin or anything about it, really. I remember my family and I have a whole backstory in there of memories that are real to me, even though I know that they're not the body's life. It's my life. I'm quite dark.
Nadia's explanation of the body was highly stereotypical, which made the person of color following Didi quite upset.
I'm also quite a lot taller than this. This body is 5'2" and quite curvy.
By reducing an entire race to a basic description of height and skin tone, Didi completely stripped away the reality of what marginalized people actually go through. Critics aggressively pointed out that while Didi got to profit off the aesthetic of a minority culture, actual people of color were dealing with the very real, lifelong racial abuse that came with it. For actual indigenous systems, being native means an identity shaped by harsh real-world statistics where generations of ancestors faced genocide and systematic displacement. This was something a white British creator could never truly comprehend or simulate. For actual indigenous systems, being native means an identity shaped by harsh real-world statistics where generations of ancestors faced genocide and systemic displacement. This was something a white British creator could never truly comprehend or simulate. Reducing a marginalized culture down to a superficial aesthetic was bad enough, but Didi took it a step further by immortalizing that stereotype in their art. Not only did they create their own illustrations of Nadia, but explicitly encouraged their followers to submit their own fan art. The results were disastrous. The community blindly followed Didi's lead, amplifying the racial insensitivity by drawing Nadia in heavily sexualized poses and stereotypical costume-like outfits. This supposedly harmless fan art only added to the growing outrage among Black, Indigenous, and people of color viewers. An Indigenous system stepped forward to emphasize just how dangerous and hurtful it was to hypersexualize a teenage native alter, given the horrific history of sex crimes and systemic committed against Indigenous women and minors. Realizing the controversy was threatening their brand, DID attempted damage control by issuing an apology, but they handled it in an incredibly poor manner. Instead of addressing their massive audiences on YouTube or Instagram, DID chose to address the issue on their least followed platform, Tumblr. The post reads less like a genuine apology and more like a defensive wall of text, prioritizing excuses over actual accountability. Shortly after, DID followed it up with a video announcing that Nadia had gone permanently dormant, essentially dying, because she couldn't handle being told her existence was wrong.
Split into two alters. Nadia started struggling in late 2019. She couldn't handle everything the internet told her that she was. She internalized some of the really nasty things that people were saying.
To the person of color watching, this felt like an ultimate act of gaslighting. DID was effectively blaming marginalized people for getting hurt, suggesting that the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities' demand for respect had literally an altar. If a person of color politely commented on why the apology fell short, they were instantly targeted. DID's fandom would bully them into silence, or DID would just quietly delete the comments altogether. But as DID started realizing that deleting things wasn't working anymore, they dropped a massive bomb to completely change the conversation. Mid-May 2020, DID announced they would remain active on Instagram because one of their alters had a very close call with died. On May 23, 2020, the Entropy system spoke up against DID, claiming that their break was just an attempt to distance themselves from the drama that they'd had stirred up towards themselves, and their suicide call was a trick to manipulate people into feeling sad for them.
Basically, like, stirring up every piece of drama that came her way for views and sympathy. like
Now at that time, DID was still active on their Patreon, which is a platform where creators put on exclusive content that only paid subscribers have access to. Watching Entropy's live stream, a patron named Rose got worried. She desperately reached out to ask DID if Entropy was lying, unable to understand why DID would want to manipulate people's sadness. DID strategically smoothed things over by telling fans they weren't trying to manipulate anyone. The only reason they shared this story of their close call was because they wanted to be open and honest about their struggles. Then they took a step further to protect their income. They told the followers that their page was strictly a place for education and that their Patreon was absolutely not the place for community drama. They basically asked everyone to keep the controversy completely off their paid platform in the future. But DID's wholesome explanation completely fell apart when the Entropy system leaked a private text conversation between them. In the screenshot, DID flat out admitted that she wanted people to realize that their behavior had an impact and could deeply hurt her system. To the public, it was a confirmation that DID's Instagram hiatus was a calculated move to gain sympathy. After this failed stunt, DID disappeared from all platforms, including Patreon, for almost 4 months. DID essentially took this break to stay away from more controversies, but it felt like the drama couldn't stay away from her even in her absence. In late August 2020, while DID was still offline, a user on Reddit accused DID of stealing their personal trauma stories and the specific traits of their alters to build their own inner world. Even though DID's video had been deleted, the emotional fallout was massive. The user pointed out that DID had a habit of doing this to people and that it was time for her to pack up and leave the DID community. Commenters sympathized with the OP, saying they believed their story. Some of the victims shared similar stories as well, where they had been betrayed by DID the same way. But by using their hiatus as an excuse, DID conveniently ghosted this situation and never addressed these allegations. When the dust started to settle down, DID finally rejoined the community in September 2020. This was supposed to be a fresh start where they would stay away from the drama and focus completely on educational content as they had promised before taking the break. But as soon as DID stepped back into the spotlight, they immediately ignited one of their most explosive controversies yet. On the 25th of September 2020, DID made an announcement post on their YouTube channel. They revealed that they still didn't feel stable enough to be creating content again just yet, but would love to connect with their fans again. To do that, they introduced a fan contest called DissociaDID Draws, inspired by Inktober. The idea was simple. Fans would submit artwork, the community would vote on their favorites, and the winning design would be turned into DissociaDID's official merchandise. But the catch was that the whole thing was happening on Patreon. This was a total red flag. DID was actively ignoring the victims who accused them of stealing their trauma, and instead of clearing the air, they were launching an art contest. On top of that, if they just wanted to bond with their community, why put a price tag on it? Why not just use Instagram so everyone could participate? And that's exactly what their audience started asking, reminding everyone that paying Patreon Patreon subscribers hadn't received any tier rewards throughout DD's break. DD's response was unconvincing, and that was the last time she'd even attempt to defend it. Any criticism or question about the money after that was quietly deleted. Naturally, the internet slammed DD for this move. Despite all the valid criticism, a massive portion of her fan base still backed her up completely and wanted to participate in the contest no matter what. And some of these stories were honestly tough to look at, like this one. And for a little perspective, these weren't standard entry rules. Users were forced to pay for a 3-month subscription before they qualified for the full merch benefits. And just a month after that whole Patreon money grab situation, DD made their comeback to YouTube. At this stage, the foundation of trust DD had built over the years was completely shattered. It seemed like they just couldn't stop sparking new controversies even when they just did their job, and each new scandal was exceptionally worse than the previous ones. On October 3rd, 2020, DD introduced a new alter named Mara, who was supposedly a demon alter.
I'm not supposed to be doing this. My name is Mara. I'm the first persecutor to be on the channel.
Now, by this time, DD had already introduced some 20 plus personalities to their audience, and a handful of these were actually non-human alters. So, for their longtime fanbase, this kind of stuff wasn't exactly anything new, but these new viewers who had only just started following DD because of the recent controversies simply couldn't digest this overly dramatized addition to an already unrealistic lineup of personalities. Now, to be totally clear, this isn't to say that non-human alters aren't legitimate, because they absolutely are. It's a well-documented psychological fact that people with DID can develop non-human fragments or alters. But here's the clinical context. Having dozens of highly distinct, fully realized non-human personas appearing regularly on camera, that is incredibly rare, and that's exactly why the presentation felt so jarring to onlookers. But Mara's edgy aesthetics and melodramatic behavior were just the tip of the iceberg. In the years that followed, she would become the epicenter of multiple scandals, adding to the long list of controversies already tied to the channel, but more on that later. By the end of 2020, DissociaDID had become so heavily commercialized that the educational core of the channel was slowly disappearing. It left DD's audience staring at a deeply unsettling question. Is any of this even real, or is it just a performance? Generally speaking, calling someone a faker online is a pretty toxic move, and when you're dealing with a complex, widely misunderstood condition like DID, telling the difference between a real disorder and a performance from behind a screen is almost impossible. But that boundary was about to be shattered by a looming investigation, one that would cause their entire empire to completely crumble. On October 25th of 2020, two journalists, Lindsay Dodson and Margaret Harris, dropped an article that blew the whole situation wide open. It was a deeply researched expose that essentially pulled back the curtain on DissociaDID's content, tracking their rise to fame and showing exactly where the cracks in their story started to form. By analyzing their content and layout, the journalists exposed how their over-dramatized character work was crossing the line from awareness into pure performance. Once the article reached Redditors, they started digging deeper, as they're often known to do. They dedicated an entire subreddit, r/DissociaDID, to dissecting DD's content to find answers. By the start of 2021, DD was knee-deep in water. For years, they reassured their audience that they had an official diagnosis from a prestigious UK institution called the Pottergate Centre, under its director and psychotherapist Remy Aquarone, and nobody had questioned it. But here's the twist. Remy is a psychotherapist, but in the UK, a psychotherapist cannot legally give you an official medical diagnosis. You have to see a licensed psychiatrist for that. As far as the Pottergate Center is concerned, as they state on their website, it doesn't actually have the authority to give out official clinical diagnoses. They are a screening and assessment facility. Essentially, they run tests to see if you show symptoms of DID, and if you do, then based on the reports suggest further consultations with psychiatrists. The internet dug some dirt on the Pottergate Center itself. It's not known to hand out diagnoses to anyone who can afford it. There's much documented criticism of the Pottergate Center found online. Among critics, the Pottergate Center is known for handing out diagnoses to anyone who can afford it. According to their own historical data, about 90% of the people who accept an assessment from them are told they have some kind of dissociative disorder, with 60% of those cases being classified as DID. These numbers are pretty high considering the actual rate of of DID in the UK, which is 1.5%. And if you think the blurring lines about a diagnosis that funds your entire lifestyle is bad enough, you're in for a treat because things are about to get exponentially worse. Right when the internet skepticism was at its absolute peak, DID dropped a video attempting to clear the air about their medical history. This time they claimed they had a backup diagnosis from the NHS in a very confused and hesitant way.
And in there we were assessed by a psychiatrist and, put on new meds. And she was like, well, you've got a diagnosis from the NHS.
The timing was incredibly convenient, to say the least. It immediately forced viewers to ask the obvious question. If they had an official diagnosis from the UK's National Health Service this entire time, why were they only bringing it up now? And just as expected, they didn't show a single shred of proof to back the NHS claim up. What they did show, however, was their scores from that Pottergate screening, proudly displaying an overall score of 71. To the average viewer, a 71 sounds like just a really severe case of DID, but the reality was completely different. On a similar widely used screening tool called the DES, real patients living with DID usually score right around a 48. Once a patient's score crosses 60, clinicians immediately flag the file for malingering, which is a clinical term for faking or over-exaggerating a condition. Between a non-diagnostic facility, a therapist who couldn't legally diagnose her, and a test score that practically screamed exaggeration, DID's entire defense network had turned to dust. Now, any rational person at this point would probably back away and stop pushing the act, but that's not DID's style. Instead, they put on their usual unbothered front, operating under the assumption that the internet would eventually get bored and move on as long as their core fan base kept supporting the channel. But they totally miscalculated. Hardly a month later, another scandal surfaced on the internet, and this scandal was so dark and twisted that it forced DID into their longest hiatus ever. Remember that Reddit user who accused DID of stealing their trauma? It turns out stealing from fans wasn't the only way DID built their inner world. In February 2021, a drama documentary channel called Granddad's Lounge uploaded a video that completely shifted the narrative. It also accused DissociaDID of pulling their alter backstories and inner world layouts straight from a book on SRA books. For context, SRA is a massive moral panic from the 1980s and 90s involving debunked conspiracy theories about underground cults using highly specific extreme to shatter a victim's mind. The video laid out uncanny similarities between her content and an SRA book titled How the Illuminati Formula Creates an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave. The revelations spread across the internet like wildfire. Yet, instead of trying to debunk the accusations or address her audience, DID took the coward's way out. They sent 3 copyright strikes to GD's channel in an attempt to take it down. While she didn't manage to destroy this channel completely, the original video was removed by YouTube. However, GL left a preview clip on his channel that gave viewers the gist of the theory, and the internet ran with it.
Nobody has access beyond the carousel except me and one of our persecutors, Demon. Only Demon and I are able to access the carousel. There is a door that floats in the center of the carousel. To everybody else, this door looks black.
The original video may be gone, but the digital trail left behind contains more than enough proof to show where her inspiration likely came from. To understand why the internet was so unnerved, you'd have to look at the actual text side by side with DissociaDID's videos. The book had an alter called Jade, which is uncomfortably similar to DD's alter of the exact same name, Jade.
Hello everybody, my name is Jade, and this is my Meet the Alters video. In the inner world, I have long black hair, down to my lower waist. I have green eyes, pale skin, I'm quite tall, and I'm slender. I prefer to wear all black. I generally wear high-necked dresses, are my preference, with thick tights and a girdle.
Another similar alter is Omega, which the book defines as a psychological safety switch. This alter is programmed to commit suicide in cases of emergency. In a video discussing their own system, DD revealed they had an alter named Omega who was a dead alter and formed because of DD's suicide attempt. The book also details different types of deaths. The programmers murder their victims in 4 ways of death: mental, moral, spiritual, and physical death. They program 4 types of ongoing suicide into them. They bring them mental, moral, spiritual, push some alters to physical. died. They push them into near-death experiences. Some alters die and are discarded. Often, they are dead alters within a live system. This is identical to how DD explained their own inner world to her viewers, using those exact non-clinical concepts of mental and spiritual death to justify why some of her alters were seemingly dead.
There's an experience where, for example, the body is close to death, or the child feels like they're going to die. In some cases, that child or adult may be actually dying. And the way the brain processes that, if it splits, is with a dead alter.
In the book, there's a prominent authority figure named Ruby who is suspected to be red. Traditionally, her color is red, the color of life force. The mother is associated with adulthood and parenthood. The mother is ripeness and balance. She is a nurturer. She is confident and has no indecision. Summer is the mother's time of the year. The full moon is her monthly point of power. Ruby-colored slipper are actually used as a symbol of authority at the matriarch level. This description matches heavily with DD's alter Ruby.
Ruby stepped in to raise me, essentially. I don't see Ruby as my mother, but I do see her as a mother figure to me.
The text also outlines a caretaker alter named Sally, mirroring Chloe's own caretaker.
My name is Sally. My role? I'm technically a protector, but I'm more of an inner caretaker. I work mostly on the inside. I used to exist primarily to soothe Chloe.
Other similarities in the book and DD's inner world includes the concept of gatekeeper carousel.
Sexually, I believe myself to be asexual. I have very little interest in that sort of thing.
I control who has access to the dungeons, who has access to the carousel, who has access to the basement, and nobody has access beyond the carousel except me and one of our persecutors, Demon.
What's happened now? And they were like, you copied everything from this book, and I was like, what book? And it's this book that we've literally had never heard of before that point.
Trapped under the weight of a scandal they couldn't explain away, DD pulled their favorite defense mechanism out of the playbook. They vanished from the internet. This unannounced break stretched out for an entire year, which was so far the longest they had been away from the internet. But if DD thought that stepping away from the camera would cause the internet to lose interest, they were dead wrong. While the channel sat in total silence, the internet kept digging. And just when it seemed like her reputation couldn't possibly take another hit, a brand new piece of evidence surfaced on the internet. An old screenshot began circulating on the internet, taken from a video where a teenager was in the middle of a mental breakdown. Instead of offering support, DD had left a comment where they had asked the teen if they'd ever thought about having DID, and then directed them to their own YouTube channel. To anyone watching, it looked nothing like she was trying to educate, but recruit a specific vulnerable audience. Once these screenshots went public, the floodgates opened and the criticism became blunt and unforgiving. A wave of former viewers came forward with their own stories. Some revealed that they had known people, mostly teenagers, who, under her influence of DD, spent years faking mental illnesses or genuinely believing they had DID. This went way beyond standard internet drama. For someone who built a career claiming to be a compassionate mental health advocate, DD was doing a terrible job of spreading awareness. They were carelessly toying with actual human lives, manipulating vulnerable young people who needed real medical help, all to just expand their digital empire. Yet a damaged reputation wasn't enough to keep DD offline forever. In 2022, they made their comeback with not an apology, not an explanation, but a brand new alter introduction. According to DD, two of their alters, Mara and Doll, refused to make a new alter, which was again named Mara.
Is the fusion result of two alters, one that was called Mara and one that was called Doll. And the Mara that came out of that fusion has kept the name Mara. So there's like...
They followed that up by breaking down the science of this new alter, but the explanation was so bizarre that it instantly became the target of ridicule on the internet. They went on to explain that this new version of Mara was an introject. To put it simply, in the DID community, an introject is an alter that is based on someone from the outside world. This usually falls into two categories: a factive, which is a real-world person like a celebrity, a teacher, or an abuser, or a fictive, which is a fictional character from a movie, a book, or a TV show.
Alters and systems can have introject alters that can be either factives or fictives, and that essentially is when a system who is experiencing something traumatic
And while her explanation sounded clinically correct on paper, it was Mara's behavior that really set off the audience. Chloe claimed Mara was a fictive formed by internet hate, which can be a genuine trauma response, but then she immediately gave that trauma response a TikTok account. It was a massive contradiction, and the community was quick to notice. Remember when I called Mara the epicenter of multiple scandals? Let's talk why. In June 2022, Mara posted a highly suggestive video set to a children's song on her TikTok account.
Calling all movies! Team movies, newbies!
1, 2, 3, 4!
When viewers naturally called her out for how inappropriate it was, she didn't apologize or take the video down. Instead, she straight up denied it, doubling down and insisting there was absolutely nothing sexual about it in the first place. Not long after, she walked right into another mess during a live stream. Mara was doing her makeup on camera while playing music in the background.
On the street is that her apples are delicious. The jury said she's charming, but
Multiple fans immediately jumped into the live chat to warn her that the artist she was playing was a known sexual abuser, begging her not to promote their music. But instead of switching the track, Mara completely ignored them and kept the song playing. At a certain point, you have to wonder if the drama is a byproduct of the channel or the actual goal, because just when the dust from the Mara scandal began to settle, Chloe walked straight into a familiar minefield. For creators like Didi, there are no lessons to be learned, just patterns to be repeated. A couple months after the whole Mara situation, Didi found themselves facing accusations of heavy racism once again. They uploaded a TikTok lip-syncing to a Doja Cat track that features heavy use of the N-word. With their history of racism scandals, and to be fair, just everything else that they were being criticized for, you'd think that they'd be hyper aware of how this looked. At the very least, why not just use the clean version of the track? But they didn't, and so people reacted like they do. But at this stage in her career, Didi was so deeply entrenched in controversies that the public backlash didn't even seem to register. Instead of an apology, they released a response video telling viewers they were overreacting, insisting she never actually uttered the slur.
You can't say that, oh, that's because it doesn't happen. No, it's because it is so normalized. And if you're trying to Google, for example, racist disability advocates, that things like that aren't going to ping on Google, because it's just going to come up about anti-racist advocates.
But the internet can only stay outraged for so long before they lose interest. As the massive explosive scandals began to slow down, they were replaced by a much quieter, highly repetitive pattern. From 2023 onwards, she kept things low stakes, uploading regular altar videos and focusing heavily on her Patreon audience. Every time she came back, she had a new narrative ready, either a brand new altar to introduce, or a new host in attempts to change people's perspective of them, or a stalker storyline involving doxing threats. Needless to say, nobody was buying the excuses. Most people had entirely checked out, only keeping tabs on her digital footprint to archive evidence. They knew her history, and they wanted to make sure they had proof saved the next time things inevitably got messy. As of 2026, the DissociaDID channel sits at 1.2 million subscribers, maintaining a steady stream of content across YouTube and Patreon. In total, she has allegedly introduced around 40 different altars to her audience so far. But even after years of intense scrutiny, she hasn't completely stopped making major blunders on camera, like calling the constant splitting of new altars and sudden internal fusions a form of progress.
Fusions have happened, a lot of progress has happened, and we're really excited to share with you all of that, including things that we've learned through stuff like courses and certificates.
In DID, splitting more altars isn't a sign of healing, it's a sign that the brain is under intense, unmanageable stress. More altars means your mental health is getting worse. But I guess that's what getting better looks like for someone who makes their living off of being sick. They also throw in vague claims of newly acquired certifications without ever providing a single shred of verifiable proof.
Courses and certificates that we've got, as well as our personal journeys and therapy and stuff that we've learned from first-hand experience.
Ultimately, the only reason DissociaDID has survived the longest waves of public backlash is her fan base. While the broader internet has completely checked out, a dedicated core of followers remains, giving them the exact audience and the financial lifeline they need to keep going. These fans don't want a genuine mental health journey, they're invested in the story and want to see DD survive. As long as fans keep validating the videos and funding the Patreon, the cycle will continue, and DD will never have to face the consequences of their digital footprint.